Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are, wherever you're watching this. Welcome to part 8 of building a beach buggy with me, Neil. Obviously it's part 8 in a series, so if you skip back to the beginning, if you haven't already seen them, watch all the other parts, and if you like what you see, hopefully you'll end up all the way back here again. What we're going to do in this episode, we're going to fit some pedals to our nicely painted chassis. We're not going to go very far without pedals, so that's pretty important. We're going to shorten the shift rod, which joins the shifter to the gearbox. So again, we're not going very far if we can't change gear. And we're also going to prep some parts ready for sandblasting so we can really get stuck into putting this thing back together. This episode involves a little bit of woodwork as well, which is bizarre. Why would we be doing woodwork when we're building a beach buggy? Stick around, you'll find out. I won't waffle on too long. We'll get cracking with some work. So thank you for joining me. Let's build a beach buggy. One of the next parts to get blasted is going to be the axle tubes. But unfortunately, it's not just as straightforward as throwing them at Nick and saying, please blast them, because we've got a bearing in the end we need to pull out. And this part here is pretty interesting because this piece in the manufacturing process is then slid over here, and then there's a pin and everything locating it, but technically it probably is removable, but they're generally considered to be, you know, once they're on there, they're on there, they're fused together. The reason that would need to come off is to get this little dude all right, because it's, you know, it's kind of trapped on there, it can't go anywhere. But I've got a way around that. There's no need to actually remove that, so we will find a way around that. But yeah, one thing we definitely need to do is get these bearings out. Already got that one out, so I'll show you the easiest way of doing that. Now, if these were still mounted to the car, obviously you'd have your axle coming through the middle there, so you'd have to use one of them funny bearing pullers that sort of hooks into the outside lip there. But because they're not on the car, we've got good access, we can get all the way down the inside. And as luck would have it, that 3/4 inch socket extension fits pretty perfect in there, so let's see if we can get it first go. There she goes. Easy as that. Okay, that's those ready to be sent to the blaster, so I don't have to worry about any of these, you know, the gasket sealing faces or the bearing faces getting damaged by the grip. We've got some bits of ply covering up that end. And that end, this works really well because it's sort of held this down nice and tight there, so it protects that face, stops it from jangling round. Also, on the inside there, what I've done is cut a piece of, it's an old motorbike inner tube, so I've stretched it over the end of the axle there, put a zip tie around it, then doubled it back on itself, so it's protecting all the bits that we don't want to blast. Because some people don't realise this, but if you want to protect something from the sandblaster, rubber is the best thing to do it with, because it literally just hits it and bounces off. So that's the plan there, that protects that, so we can put that in the pile of stuff to be blasted, along with, got our spring plates down there as well for the back. Got our spring plate covers there for the end, which I actually bought these about 20 years ago for the first buggy project that I started and never finished when I was a lot younger. Don't want chrome ones, so we're going to blast those, paint them black. Those all look lovely. Also, our gearbox cradle on the back there. Not a big fan of this goldy, greeny, whatever it is, anodized, I don't know what it is, finish. Fine if it's on a Mylodon sump or something like that, but it's not. So want that black, so I've just run around the edge with a sanding disc and a grinder, just radiused the corners, smoothed all the edges, so we get a lot nicer finish when it's painted. So that stuff can go to Nick. And while we're doing that, we need to find something else to do, because he's on holiday at the moment, the lazy git, so we're going to have to get on with something else. What can we do next? Here's a little job that I can do next. These are the bolts that hold the gearbox cradle on the back there, but they're, I mean, look at them. I can't have those on my nice shiny new chassis. The only problem with those is they're a pretty unusual thread. They're 18mm by 1.5mm thread pitch, and they've got this sort of slightly larger diameter shoulder on them, so they're most definitely not an off-the-shelf part. Now, there is a company in the US that makes them. They're about, well, I think they're over 100 quid a pair, so we're certainly not going to be going with them, especially not when we've got a lathe there. So I've just been to the shop and bought some of them, which are quite clearly far too big, but that gives us a good starting point to make some nice shiny stainless steel ones. So let's do some lathe work. Okay, before we can do anything, first thing I need to do is just drill a little dimple in the end there to get it on the live centre on this end to steady things up a bit, and then we can make some bolts. There we go, that's better. Not bad for, these bolts were £7.50 each, the other ones would have worked out about 50-60 quid each, and the other ones, they only had a little Allen keyhole in the end as well, which is just guaranteed to round off, because they'd need to be done up pretty tight. So I've turned the writing off on the top there as well, make them look a little bit nicer, but there is one way they could look even nicer yet, and that's to give them a little bit of a polish. And I've got to go to work where my buffer is to polish this jobby anyway, so I'm going to treat myself. Why don't we polish these as well? Before I do that, I've just got to sand off all these little lines and whatnot in them and make them look super duper pretty. Okay, we're at work, time to do some polishing. Good tip for this, stick it in the end of a tube, easy peasy. There we go. You'll see your face in it. We're giving that a good going over as well. Shiny, shiny. Speaking of shiny, while we're here, I always like to just have a little peek at that. That's loads better. You'll also notice I've put the fuel line in and the brake line in. I've left them a little bit oversized at the moment. We'll sort those out later. So you might remember a few episodes ago, cut my hole there from a little rubber widget that goes in there. And then at the front, we come out the side there. It's a bit dark, but you see I've got a little rubber grommet there, and fuel line comes out that side there. So I didn't bother filming putting those in because it was basically me just swearing for an hour, going back and forth, pushing that end, working it through this end, doing all that. I knew they'd be a pig to get in, but they've only got to go in once and they're in. So that's that. Right, next, what's next? What can we do next? Let's look for something to do. I'll tell you what, I want to have a tidy up before I do anything. Oh, there's junk everywhere. No good. That's better. I found something I can do as well. This, if you don't recognise it, is the shift rod, which unsurprisingly goes from the shifter at that end to the gearbox at that end. But obviously it's too long because we've shortened the chassis. So next job is going to be to chop that down. But before we can chop it down, I need to give it a clean because she's pretty manky. So let's scrub that up and chop it down. Okay, we're all cleaned up, ready to shorten it. Now, the amount that we need to shorten it by, that's pretty obvious. Same amount as we shortened the chassis, which in my case was exactly 360 millimeters. So I've seen people do this quite a few different ways. See some people chop this end off, refit it, weld around there. I'm going to do it a slightly different way. Not for any real reason, it's just the way I feel like doing it. So I'm going to cut it on this end, take a section out, and then rejoin it. So one thing that I find really helps when, if you need to cut a piece of tube, but what you've got on either end needs to remain in the same sort of orientation, sort of like clocked correctly, a really easy way to do it is get a bit of angle so that it fits tightly to it like that, and then scribe a line all the way down it. Then you can cut your piece out, rejoin that scribe line, and yeah, keep things nice and straight. So let's do that. Here we are, we're clamped in there nice and tight, so I can get a real good scribe all the way across there. Cool. There we go. Cut one there, cut two there, so that's where we're going to do some slicing. That's our two halves now ready to rejoin. You'll see this stuff is actually pretty thin when you look at the wall thickness of it. So what I've done is just gone over to the lathe and just turned up this little widget, which is a press fit in between. So we're going to press that in between and then weld it together. Okay, there we are. You just about see it, just about see our little scribe line. So we're nice and lined up there. All we've got to do is run a weld around it, smooth it over. That's another job done. There we go, that's better. One freshly shortened shift rod. Now all I've got to do is put it in the car. Nice. Okay, now it's time to stick it back in the car. So if you're familiar with these, they're pretty straightforward. If you're not, I'll give a quick explanation. This is obviously the back end, so this coupler is what links the shift rod to the gearbox. This is where your shifter goes in here, and this little bushing with this little retainer ring goes, I'm not sure if you can see it in there, there's a little ring hanging down. Let me just get my torch. There, see that little ring doodah hanging in there? So this pops into that, and then it gets passed through the hole in the front of the frame head there. So now it's time to see if we can get these big fat hands into this tiny little hole there. Okay, so that little retainer ring obviously just snaps over there. I like to make sure that the join of it is on the opposite side of the join in the bushing there. So let's see if we can get it in first go. Easy peasy. So, see that in there? Now, got to shove that in there. And give it a little bit of help with some of the old good stuff. A little bit of grease, especially at the front there, where it's going to spend its life sliding through that bushing there. Okay, got the camera perched up there, torch shining down the end. Now let's see if I can stick my greasy rod in this hole. Know what I mean? Oh, there we are. Come on. She's tight. That's the one. Whee! Right, push that as far as I can reach. That's as far as I can get my arm in there. So now, I've got to try and get it all the way through. How am I going to do that? I'll see it, not quite. Now I'm going to go the other end with the trusty broom handle and see if I can give it a prod, and it should magically appear over here somewhere. There it is. Whee! Perfect. Okay, that's those bits out of the way. Next up, we're going to get onto some pedals. I'm aware, after looking at all the YouTube analytics and all that stuff, that most of the people watching this are in America, which is pretty amazing to me. I was thinking that, you know, I'd only get viewers on this side of the planet, but it turns out there's a lot of Americans watching it. So if you're one of those guys who knows Volkswagens inside out, this is one thing you probably wouldn't have seen, because the right-hand drive pedal assembly is very different to a left-hand drive pedal assembly. So stick around and watch that. If you're into it, you might learn something. Okay, now we've fished the cables through the tubes in the chassis there. The next thing to get stuck into is the pedal assembly. Now, these are the pedals that were in the car, so as you can see, they're absolutely worn out, they're trashed. There's bits of them damaged, bits of them missing, all sorts. And it's actually surprisingly hard to find parts for right-hand drive pedal assemblies, and you know, if I had no other choice, I would have persevered with those and I would have restored them. But there was a better option, and that's just getting a new set, which is It's technically an old set that's been restored, but they've got brand new bushings in there, stainless steel spring, beautifully done by Matthew at the Old School Parts Shop. So if you need a pedal assembly, he's your man. I am going to change things around a little bit because it wouldn't be me if I didn't. So we're going to make a new one of these, make a throttle pedal, do a few other little odds and ends to sort of make it mine. But yeah, beautiful job. If you're looking for a standard pedal assembly, that's your man. Okay, that's the pedals bolted into the car. I've temporarily bolted the master cylinder in. I'm going to be taking that out to paint it, but I'll just chuck that in for now so I can work out where everything's got to go. Now, I'm really happy that they fit for a start because we did a fair amount of chopping about with the chassis back there, you remember. I did do a little bit of a trial fitment before I painted it just to be certain, but yeah, everything fits how it should. So one of the parts we're going to remake is this little doodah here, and the purpose that serves is to sort of support this end of the pedal assembly there. Now, these floor pans are slightly different to the factory Volkswagen ones, so nothing really tallies up exactly how it should. There's normally a big ugly piece of flat plate welded in there, but we don't want that because it looks hideous. So what I've done is, that's one part that I've already made just out of a bit of 6mm stainless scrap that I had kicking about, which just fits into there, which spaces us up enough that we're, you know, clear of the floor pan there. So we're going to make a nice little piece to effectively join that to support this end of the pedals. Now, I've already done some super high-tech blueprints there, as you'll see, but that's enough for me to figure out exactly what I'm doing. So next up, I need to transfer those measurements onto that, which is, again, just a piece of scrap stainless steel box section that I got kicking about. You'll see I've already been at that. I remember what those bits were for. That was for some little bits for the hot rod, for the brake pipes to go into. So always keep stuff like that kicking about. You never know when you're going to need it. So I'm going to transfer my measurements, cut it out, drill some holes, clean it up and bolt it on. Okay, that's that pretty much done. Only a simple part, but try and make it as nice as possible. I've sanded it up with the old fibre disc in the grinder there, so I can take it to work tomorrow, run it through the buffer, and it will come out all shiny and chrome looking. So I had to go in there with files and a die grinder and whatnot and just sort of shape that hole, because it's got the two flat spots on there for it to locate onto the shaft. But yeah, not bad for an evening's work. Nicer than the standard one anyway. That's better. We're all bolted in for the final time. Got this all polished up, nice and shiny. What else have I done? I've changed all the little circlips on there for stainless steel ones, just because I can. Also made up some like little nylon washers on the lathe, which basically go in between any moving parts, so it takes out all the play and everything, makes it super smooth. You probably can't tell, you'll have to take my word for it, but these things are mega smooth. So that's the pedal assembly done. apart from making a throttle pedal, but that's a story for another day. Okay, that's where we're going to end part 8 of building a beach buggy. Didn't get any massive jobs done, but we got some really important small ones done. And the small ones can sometimes take a lot longer than you think. Things like that pedal assembly, if you want it to operate completely smoothly and flawlessly and look pretty as well, it takes time. But that's why I do it. That's why I love it. I like to make these things as good as I possibly can. I always mention it at the end of each episode. Instagram, Neil of Steel, blah blah blah. If you like what you see here, follow us on there. Another thing that's worth mentioning is some people are under the misconception that if you subscribe to somebody on YouTube that it costs you money. It doesn't cost you a penny. So I'll just explain how that works if you don't know. Basically, go on YouTube, which you're already on it if you're watching this. Create an account if you haven't got one. It's totally free. All that subscribing means is basically you get a notification whenever me or anybody else that you subscribe to uploads a new video. So it doesn't cost you a penny, but it helps out people like me a lot. So if you want to do that, it'd be very much appreciated. And share it on Instagram, Facebook, whatever else it is you use. Yeah, I'm really happy with how many people are watching these videos, but the more the better. So please keep up the good work. Another thing I always say is if you've got an old car or an old bike or anything like that that's your pride and joy, get out there, use it, have fun with it. There's no point in having this stuff if you're not going to use it and have fun with it. So I'll leave you with that, and we'll see you next time on building a beach buggy. See you later.